This video is all about the AER amps. This here is a Compact 60 and this is the Compact Mobile 60, basically the battery operated version of this here. I've used these amps for years, both for busking and also for foldback on stage, and the sound, if you're playing an acoustic instrument like a violin or a guitar, it's absolutely fantastic on both of these. These amps do get a lot of wear and tear, and there are various spare parts that you can buy directly from the company. One of the things that wears out is these little foam pads on the front here. This one's completely been eaten away by moths over the year, and this one's about to fall off. So one of the things we'll do at some stage is just replace those. When I bought the Compact Mobile here, it didn't come with a carry bag, and that's almost essential for lugging this around because this is really heavy to carry. This little Compact 60 on the other hand, you can sling that over your shoulder with the strap here, and it's quite easy to carry. Another thing I would mention is that these days technology has really moved on, and I think if I was buying this setup again, I would much rather buy a wired amp like this and use one of the new lithium battery packs like this. Now this is the EcoFlow Delta. You don't need anything this big to run the Compact Mobile, but you can see that this has 4 power sockets at the back here, and I can actually run a MIG welder off that amp, but they do much smaller versions of this. Now these are relatively light, and if you buy one of these in conjunction with one of these amps, you can obviously use it for a whole host of other things like camping, etc. This particular one we use in our camper van for running all the fridge, the sink, and the solar panels plug straight into it. It's got charge controllers, etc. built in. So this here is really heavy to lug around. Although it's compact, you need to be a muscle builder to be able to walk around with that whilst busking. This combo here is much easier to get around. As a small aside, when the EcoFlow Delta came to the market via a Kickstarter campaign, it was one of the fastest funded campaigns in the history of Kickstarter, and one of the reasons that made this so popular and successful, it will charge in 20 minutes, up to 80% of its capacity in 20 minutes. So you can fully discharge this and charge it up really quickly. Anybody who's got one of those AER Compact Mobile amps will know that it takes hours to charge up. This charges up in less than an hour. I guess it would be possible to replace the lead acid batteries in this amp with lithium ones, but you need to be careful about doing that because lithium batteries have a different charging profile than lead acid batteries, and certainly on the chargers we use for car batteries, the high-end car battery chargers that we use, they have different settings for charging lithium batteries to lead acid batteries. The other thing you need to notice, although the lithium batteries are considerably lighter than the lead acid batteries, you're not allowed to take them on planes, etc. So we wouldn't be able to take this on an aeroplane, whereas in theory we would be able to take this on an aeroplane for that international busking tour. Our Compact Mobile amp has developed a problem whereby when we plug it in, after about 10 minutes, it trips all the electrics in the house. So we're going to take this apart, we're going to look at the batteries, see if we can see anything obvious, and probably change the batteries at the same time. To access the batteries on the Compact Mobile, there's 3 things you have to do. You need to, first of all, take off the 6 screws that hold on the cover plate. Now, this bit of foam is falling off on ours anyway, and we will be replacing it, but there are 6 screws here. You'll notice this double-sided tape, I don't know if that's standard or not, but doesn't go as far as the screws, so you should just be able to lift a corner down to access those screws. You're going to have to also undo these screws on the back here, and then you're going to have to take this handle section out. So let's start off taking the front off. Once you've undone those 6 screws, this should just tilt out like so, and that reveals behind it the speaker screws. There's 4 of them, and once you've taken those out, you can gently lift the speaker out. It will be attached by wires, so don't try and take it all the way out. Once you've taken out these 6 screws, which are different, they're shorter than the grill screws, you should just be able to grab this and pull it gently. Now it will be attached by wires, so once again, don't try and take it all the way out. Now in our particular case, we're looking for something that could potentially cause a short circuit. The first thing I notice is that this hot glue here that glues these wires in has come off. So have these wires been rubbing on a metal edge? We're looking for anything burnt or charred. It might just be something simple like one of the components that has burnt out, or possibly even a fault with the batteries. If you do ever have the situation that you lose all power on your amp, which happened to us the other day with this battery operated amp, there is a fuse on the amp, and that fuse is located just next to the plug, and you can pull out a little drawer. And normally on the AER amps, the fuses are 1 amp 20 mil. You actually have a spare fuse in that drawer there and a working fuse in the lower drawer. So if you do blow a fuse whilst doing a gig, you should be able to pull this out and use the spare fuse. And if you haven't blown a fuse yet, it might be worth pulling this little section out anyway, just to check that you've got a spare fuse in there, because as I say, that happened to us the other day. The screws that hold this handle on are called Torx screws, and they're a T15 and they're a star shape. Now you might be able to use an Allen key to get these out as well if they're not in there too tightly, but as I say, the correct thing is a T15 screwdriver, which you can get a set of these from Screwfix if you're in the UK. Once you've undone those screws, the center section will come out first, and then this section should just lift out. Once again, there is light adhesive strip holding this in, at least there should be, but it should just lift out like that. Once you've taken that handle out, you can get the first glimpse of the batteries. These batteries are held in by these wooden clamps, and these wooden clamps are held in with these 4mm Allen bolts here. So there's 6 bolts in total, and the reason you have to take this off is just to access those. If you've taken these 2 bolts out, you should, in theory, be able to remove this bracket here. There is some glue on there, so you might have to just pull it to get it out, and that reveals the batteries. Now, you're going to have to take this bracket off as well, because they're clamped in there pretty tightly. There's nothing obvious that I can see that would be causing this to trip. As I say, it could be a component that's blown internally. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually plug this into our EcoFlow Delta, because I don't want the electrics in the house tripping, because last time that happened, all of our computers, etc. turned off. So I'm going to flick on the power switch and see what happens here. So we can see that the unit is drawing 51 watts of power. Now what normally happens is, after a while, you can see that this is currently charging the batteries. After a while, this would trip the electrics. So let's see what happens. For anybody who's interested, these units here are absolutely fantastic. This is basically at 81%. When we plugged it in, it means that it would last for 17 hours at the current usage. Just while we're waiting to see if this trips again, the other thing that's worth pointing out, that if you play with a wireless unit like I do on my violin, then this can actually accommodate the power point for the wireless unit, and also a wireless unit for the guitar if you're playing in a duo, etc. Well, I've not been able to find any obvious reason why this thing was tripping the electrics. The only thing I would say is that this lead here is quite loose, and I might just clamp that down, because obviously leads need to be tight on these connections, because you don't want them sparking. That could cause a short, I guess. It's unlikely though. This is an early compact mobile here, and I think the early compact mobiles had 2 6-volt batteries in series, whereas the later ones, I think I'm right in saying, had 2 12-volt batteries in parallel. So just if you're in the slightest bit interested, 2 6-volt batteries wired in series will give an output of 12 volts. And the main positive, which is this here, from the 240 volt power supply, will be attached to here. The negative of this battery here will be attached to the positive of this battery here, and the negative of that battery there will then go out into the electronics of the amp. So if we look around the reverse here, here's the positive, here's the negative. If you put a voltmeter across those wires, you'd see 12 volts. Now you don't need to take the speaker out to get the batteries out. It's just easier to get your hand in there, but you could do everything from the top. So I've just taken out the top screws, or top 2 screws here, and that is enough to push that bracket back and slide this bracket out like so. lot of people don't realise that when it comes to batteries, for example, this 6-volt battery here, a fully discharged battery doesn't mean 0 volts. And a fully charged battery doesn't mean 6 volts. When this battery is fully charged, it'll be something like 6.3, 6.4 volts. And when it's fully discharged, it'll be 5.81 volts. Now you can see that this battery here at 5.92 is about 20 to 30% of its charge. And if you want to rapidly ruin one of these batteries, what you do is you store it in a discharged state like this. So for example, you've been out busking or you've done a gig, you get home at 2 o'clock in the morning, you don't use the amp again for the next 2 weeks, and you leave it like that, you will very, very quickly degrade a battery like this. You'll cause sulfation inside it, and its ability to hold charge and maintain charge will be severely diminished. So after you've done a gig and you've run down the battery, charge it up again and leave it in a fully charged state. Another thing worth mentioning that is in one of these battery operated amps, you really need a deep cycle battery or an AGM battery that's actually designed to be discharged and recharged many, many times, because certain lead acid batteries are not designed for that purpose. They're not designed to be run down, recharged and run down, recharged. So we'll be replacing these batteries with either deep cycle or AGM batteries. And the other thing that's worth mentioning is the brand of battery is very, very important. It's tempting just to go onto the internet and type in 6 volts, 12 amp hour batteries and buy the cheapest battery you can find, thinking that you've done a good deal. But in my experience, the cheaper non-branded batteries or brands that you don't recognize, although they may say 12 amp hours on there, that's not what you actually get in real life testing. And last thing to mention is obviously the amount of life you get out of your battery will depend on the temperature. So if you go out busking in the middle of winter when there's 2 inches of snow on the ground, do not be surprised if your battery operated amp lasts significantly less time than if you're out in Byron Bay busking in 30 to 40 degree heat. Although the AER amp has its own built-in charger to charge these batteries, we're going to use the Noco Genius 10 charger, which is one of the best battery chargers you could buy. Now you'll notice that this has different settings, obviously for 12 volt batteries and also for 6 volt batteries. It has a different setting for a 6 volt AGM battery versus a 6 volt battery, and that is because the charging characteristics of AGM batteries is different from a normal 6 volt battery, and it's the same with lithium batteries. You can't simply plonk a lithium battery and expect it to work with the charging structure that's built into the AER amp. So we're going to see what happens when this turns green and it's fully charged. We're going to see whether this actually retains its charge and what charge it gets to. This battery's just been on charge for about half an hour with the Noco Genius, and you can see that it's now green, which means it's fully charged. With the charger still connected, we're putting in 6.62 volts. So it'll be interesting to see how that voltage changes as we flick off the power. You definitely expect the voltage to come down, but will that voltage just continue to go down? If so, that is a sign that the battery is knackered and sulfated. It's about 20 minutes since we turned off the power, and this battery has settled down at about 6.06. and that is about 40% of its charge, or 60% discharge. So it's fair to say that that battery is knackered. It's not holding its charge. It's also worth reminding people that if you simply put a voltmeter across that battery and you said, oh yeah, it reads 6 volts, and you thought that was a fully charged battery, you would be very mistaken. Fully charged is up at 6.3, 6.4. Fully discharged, or 50% discharge, which is basically the same thing as around these levels here, 6. So just if you're in the slightest bit interested, 2 6-volt batteries wired in series will give an output of 12 volts. And the main positive, which is this here, from the 240 volt power supply, will be attached to here. The negative of this battery here will be attached to the positive of this battery here, and the negative of that battery there will then go out into the electronics of the amp. So if we look around the reverse here, here's the positive, here's the negative. If you put a voltmeter across those wires, you'd see 12 volts. There's nothing special about putting the thing back together again. It's much easier if you support the batteries with your hand here while you're lining these screws up. And also my advice would be to keep the plastic connectors on the top here so you don't inadvertently short something out while you're putting it together, and just put that on at the last minute after you've put the screws in. Just a couple of tips when you're putting this back together. By all means use power tools to put the screws in, but always finish the screws off with a screwdriver, otherwise you will ruin the chipboard. Remember, when you tighten anything up, regardless of what it is, you do it in a crisscross pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't just tighten 2 screws up on one side and then 2 on the other. A bit of spray adhesive on here. We'll put that in first, screw it down, and then we'll lay the foam on top of it, which we've also sprayed with adhesive. What to do is carefully laying that on there. I'm going to do that off camera because I need 2 hands. There we go, as good as new. We've got everything back together. We've got this plugged into the EcoFlow Delta. Now the question is, when we turn the power on here, will it trip the EcoFlow Delta with new batteries in? Let's put that to the test. Okay, interestingly enough, we're drawing 51 watts of power, same as before. Got the charge light on. Everything is looking tickety-boo. We're just going to leave this set up like this for a while. I'm not expecting it to trip. I'm going to put that down as job done. I'm not sure why it was tripping the electrics. Let's see what Britain's youngest busker has got to say about it, whether it's fixed. Maggie Scott, she's got her own YouTube channel and she's just completed the £1,000 busking challenge. She doesn't normally play a 5-string full-size violin as well. Yep, well done. For anyone interested, we bought 2 of those front foams for €14 each. The shipping bag was $58.50 and the postage from Germany was $12.50, and we got that directly from AER. That's their phone number there. We got 2 of these batteries here. We actually paid £41 for both of them. If you phone them up first, they'll give you a discount. You just need to give them your name, and if you walk into one of the BBL battery stores, they'll give you a discount compared to the website price. So £40 for 2 of those batteries.